Yae Miko is finally out, and this is an honest look at how she works with different teams and weapons, so here's exactly what you need to know about her in this showcase video. There's a couple of things that I believe will be interesting to talk about, and the first one has to be these cute fox totems. Basically, this is what defines her playstyle, and from what I've discovered, the most common way you'll want to position these totems will be in a triangle shape, because if there's a neighbor that you see is connected visually, it will level up, but by placing the triplets in a way that each one has a connection to the other two, they actually all reach max level 3. Now if you quickly unload all of these totems, all of them will strike for a total of 15 times before they disappear. Or in other words, each individual fox will do 5 strikes, and this is something that's very important to understand about damage that's spread out over time, since if you can dish out, for example, 10k hits for a total of 15 times, this results in a pretty huge 150,000 overall damage that she can do off-field, and in my opinion, it's one of the coolest selling points you can consider about Yae. But here's where things get really interesting. Yae Miko's burst is quite literally destructive because after unleashing it, it will first strike once without any questions asked, and then afterwards, if there are any totems on the field, all of them will get destroyed, and in their place, the burst will be cast once again. So if you have 3 totems present, the burst will get triggered for a total of 4 times. But here's the best part. Because of the first passive, anytime the burst eliminates the totem, the cooldown of the skill will be reset with 1 charge, which essentially means if all totems disappear, then you can immediately redeploy them. So as you can imagine, she can open up with all the totems, instantly sacrifice them to front load a lot of damage from the burst and then redeploy, before switching to someone else, since now another batch of damage will be cast passively from the foxes. To be honest, that's how I've been playing this whole time with her. I just do triple E, Q, triple E, and then quick swap to another teammate, and with only few exceptions, this rotation barely changes. Finally, I want to mention 2 advanced techniques, the first one being that Yae Miko does not snapshot at all, and the best example would be by examining the damage numbers, dynamically changing midway of her burst as you move into Bennett's field, and the same happens with her totems, but I personally don't believe it's something that you need to concern yourself with because of the rotation I just mentioned to you. Honestly, this will only matter when you're trying to score big damage from her burst, and I'll soon get to this part, but one last thing I want to mention would be that her totems are pretty slow at firing shots, which means their electro application will end up triggering most of the reactions. So it will be Yae's elemental mastery taken into account, and you can see this for yourself when using her as an overload unit together with someone like Xiangling's Pyronado. All in all, the biggest driving force, as you saw, is going to be the elemental skill, which hopefully didn't sound too complex to you, because it's really simple once you do it once, and it becomes a very much natural rotation of just forming the triangle, making it go boom, and then recreating it again for more damage. Let's just get one thing out of the way before I talk about her teams and weapons I've tried out. No, her second passive isn't that incredible that you would want to go and build a dedicated elemental mastery Yae Miko, but I will say this, it's a pretty damn good side bonus if you can get some elemental mastery boosts. A great example would be Witsith and Sucrose providing roughly 650 EM, which as you can see increases elemental skill damage, but keep in mind, this won't affect the burst, which front loads a lot of damage. So with this out of the way, the main artifact set I'll be using here is going to be a full Emblem 4 set, and sometimes also a mix between 18% attack and Thundering Fury. I am fully aware that a 4-piece Thunder Swither works really well in most situations, especially if you use her in an Electrocharge team, but the potential damage difference that I've calculated range between 2 to 8% depending on various buffs, and truth be told, I don't have a good Thunder Swither set, but if you do, it's probably one of the best options for her, even if it's on a thin margin. And the reason I know this is because I am on miHoYo's special media server, so I spend quite a lot of time figuring her out. Also, when it comes to team comps, the main ones are going to be Hyper Yae Miko, which focuses on boosting her burst damage with Benny and Kaza and or Kujo Sara, while the other team will be Tazer, or also simply called Electrocharge, where the composition is really flexible, but the focus will be free-to-play comp official Xingqiu and Sucrose. Keep in mind, because of the energy issues I'll mention in a moment, you'll always want to bring another Electro unit who can supply Yae with energy. Now, there's several weapons I've tested out, the 2 main ones being Kagura's Verity and Witsith, and yeah, the signature 5-star is obviously her best in slot choice, so it's a complete upgrade if you can get your hands on it. However, the more interesting catalyst has to be the Witsith. Its passive can randomly trigger one of 3 buffs by either increasing attack, elemental damage, or elemental mastery, and by looking at the results here, you can see that all of these 3 bonuses pretty much get to a similar number when used against a Ruin Guard, but clearly clearly, attack and elemental damage are more favorable to get. You might be thinking, doesn't this powerful passive make Woodsith into Yae's best weapon? Not really, because what you also need to consider is the extremely long cooldown of 30 seconds, which basically means after enjoying a power boost for 10 seconds, the remaining 20 will be spent without the passive active, and the damage really goes down by quite a lot. And what's even more important, if you care about the Abyss, usually you can spend up to 1.5, maybe 2 minutes on a single side of a chamber, which translates to 3 or 4 times you'll get to trigger the passive, and that's assuming you play each rotation perfectly. Don't get me wrong, this is still a really powerful option, but what I found out to be a good alternative was Solar Pearl, a catalyst that I've personally neglected for a long time, and even though triggering the passive is a bit annoying since you need to do a single normal attack for the effect to kick in, but the substat and the boost you get really rounds out her performance, and with more refinements, you can expect to get consistent results with it. Now, moving on to her free-to-play options, both Mappamari and Hakushin Ring were pretty good, and I know that Oathsworn Eye is coming out sometime later, which looks exactly what you want to get for her, because as you can see from the passive, we need to talk about her biggest issue, which at this point, I think it's becoming almost a fetish for miHoYo to release characters with really high energy cost bursts, so that we all have to struggle figuring out just how much energy recharge you need. And the thing is, Yae desperately needs a battery, which is a unit that generates a lot of energy, usually from the same element, and the two best options so far would be either Raiden or Fischl, because you really don't want to use Miko as the only electro character, since even with a battery, she still needs somewhere between 150 to 170 energy recharge, maybe even more, just so you can comfortably have the burst ready off cooldown, because as I've mentioned previously, the whole triple E, Q, triple E playstyle can only work efficiently as long as you're ready to fully unleash it, otherwise it's a big damage loss if you only end up switching to her and just doing 3 totems. Which is why I personally preferred using Hakushin Ring, because the energy recharge from substat allowed me to focus on getting more offensive stats easily from artifacts, and it proved to be a consistent free-to-play option in several teams. I also imagine the limited Oathsworn Eye from 2.5 will be even better than Hakushin, but regarding the showcases shown so far with these weapons, I did find that all the free-to-play options work really great in Tazer comps, and turns Yae into one mean sub-damage dealer. As a last note, I do want to talk about one team I feel will get neglected, and it's using Yae together with Eula, which worked surprisingly really well, especially if you have a C6 Diona who provides a nice boosted totem damage, and with someone like Fischl or Raiden, the rotations are pretty exciting, although it can get a little tricky when trying to pull off everything in succession. So what do I think about Yae Miko? Well, I'm kind of starting to get tired of expensive burst costs, because if you truly want to utilize her full potential without needing to go deep into energy recharge, then you need another electro teammate like Raiden or Fischl, because by herself, Yae will slowly generate a total of 5 particles from her totems, and realistically speaking, she will be swapped out during that time, so it's even less energy she's getting. And it's important to have that burst up at all times, because by quickly deploying the totems, then destroying with the burst and redeploying is a combination of a long-term and short-term damage that you don't want to miss out on, especially with the current Abyss cycle that's absolutely designed against her, since electrocharge teams work best against multiple enemies, while Hyper Yae isn't going to be easily accessible to everyone, since you really want Kazuha, Bennett, and probably Raiden to get a damage that Yae deserves. It also makes me a little mad that miHoYo is baiting everyone with the first constellation, which offers a whopping 32 energy when all totems get destroyed, basically turning her burst cost into 58, that can easily downplay the importance of energy recharge. Still, what I find to be refreshing about her are the multiple weapon choices to go after without needing to rely on Kagura's rarity, even if it offers good damage upgrade, but with something like Woodsith, Solar Pearl, Hakushin Ring, Oathsworn Eye, and heck, even Emerald Orb for starters, you can get really good results in pretty much any team build. What I also like about her is that she's pretty simple. If you haven't noticed, nothing from her talents benefit the team besides providing raw damage potential, and because all the buffs she receives do not snapshot, you can essentially just have a free-flowing combat by just focusing on boosting her burst, while the totems will constantly deal less or more damage depending on the active buffs you're getting. Finally, one more great thing is that you can build her in several artifact loadouts and get roughly the same results, with Thunder Soother sitting at the top by a small margin, so you have the freedom to choose what you want to pursue, and that elemental mastery passive that she benefits from is a nice to have thing when using teammates that provide the stat. Overall, if you think you need a great electro sub damage dealer with few caveats, Yae Miko will be the perfect fit for you. I hope you enjoyed this quick video showcasing Yae Miko's build and some of the teams I've explored. I believe there's still a lot more about her more that I haven't covered, so look out for my future videos where I compare her constellations from 0 to 6, as well as a guide video that delves deeper into how you can build the best shrine fox. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you soon.